happens when greed and power run a society? In William Golding's Lord of the Flies, this question is answered through a group of stranded boys on an island and how their society falls apart. This fall is driven by power, greed, and savagery. My name is Miguel Sanchez, and this project will dive into how Jack, the main book's antagonist, gives into his inner desires, leading to the fall of the island through the psychoanalytic frame. In this literary analysis, a psychoanalytic criticism frame will be utilized. This frame analyzes text based on the conscious or unconscious desires characters may have, and how these desires will drive and affect the decisions made by these characters, not forgetting about their behaviors as well. In The Lord of the Flies, we'll be analyzing the character Jack and how ideas like savagery and power arise and affect his actions. Jack's desires through the novel continue to grow, and he begins to reject civility and the rules, stating, "I'm not going to play any longer, not with you." Golding 156. By diving into these topics, we'll understand how his choices and actions drive towards the deterioration of society on the island. In The Lord of the Flies, the slow deterioration of civilization accelerates the hunger for savagery. The slow deterioration of rule and order boosts the internal hunger for savagery, openly shown through Jack's actions when he favors the hunt, strength, and violence. Especially when Jack says, "Bollocks to the rules, we're strong, we hunt. If there's a beast, we'll hunt it down. We'll close in and beat and beat and beat." Golding 110. But the best form of symbolism for the fall and ultimately fallen civilization happens when the narrator says, "The conch exploded into 1,000 white fragments and ceased to exist." Golding 224. This represents the fall of society and complete destruction of order, especially when Golding says that the conch exploded and ceased to exist. But to fully understand how Jack manipulated fear to use the boys as pawns in his hand, I interviewed him myself to let him tell me his story. Hello, Jack. Thank you for coming. I wanted to start off by asking, when did the idea of civilization and order become unsatisfying to you?
Thank you for having me, Miguel. The idea of civilization and order became uninteresting to me the moment I wasn't voted leader. All those stupid rules, meetings, and the conch are symbols of useless power in my eyes. I wanted real control, not some lame show, so I gave the boys exactly what they wanted. I offered them safety and excitement, and I took action rather than waiting for it to come to me on a silver platter. I did this to achieve my goal by accepting savagery and giving into my inner beast. And this is what made me powerful, not some dumb conch. And as you can tell, power and savagery have always been my priority, as they allowed me to feel in control. I could lead how I wanted to lead, rather than being held back by all these invisible rules. I did what came naturally, hunting and violence. I felt like myself. And as civilization came burning down, I realized there was no piggy to talk sense. There was no solemn assembly for debate, nor dignity of the conch.
I like your response. In your last sentence, I wanted to talk about there was no piggy to talk sense, there was no solemn assembly for debate, nor dignity of the conch. I feel like that showed exactly how civilizations collapse, allowed for savagery to take over, and piggy really represented that rational thought and thinker kind of person, and the conch symbolized civility and order. But both of these forces being present, they restricted you from fully reaching out and giving into your own desires. But once these disappeared, nothing could really stop your hunger for power. And this proves that without civilization's rule and order, also structure, savagery will dominate, and internal instincts as well. Your group's emotions and actions affect your decision making.
The group's emotions? That's exactly where my power comes from. I thrive off of the emotions of the boys. When the boys have fear, what do? I serve as their protector. I offer the remedy they oftentimes seek. Over time, as emotions of the group become more intense, my control grows. I feed into their instincts, as understanding fear and desire makes makes the boys easier to lead. Like when all at once Robert was screaming and struggling with the strength of frenzy, the chant rose ritually, as at the last moment of a dance or a hunt. By responding to the emotions rather than reason, I'm left with power. I strengthen my authority and push the boys more into the hand of savagery. That's real leadership, compared to whatever Ralph, boring rules and orders had going on.
Before we move on to question 3, I wanted to talk about question number 2 that you just answered, Jack. Your response demonstrates how manipulation of the boys' emotions and reliance on group peer pressure allowed you to gain power. The frenzy specifically showing how rational decisions and group mob mentality take over as savagery and internal instincts influence the actions of others. A study done by, I believe, Daniel B. M. Juan supports that idea, stating children as young as 4 years of age are subject to peer pressure. They often conform to unanimous majority of 3 peers in spite of better knowledge, out of social motivations mainly. Preschoolers' levels of conformity closely match those reported for adults. That could be found on page 7. You use conformity to your advantage, as we see in your response, as well as fear and savagery to lead rather than reason. How did you use the beast to support your power and induce fear in the boys to make them seek comfort in you as well as comfort in their inner savagery?
The beast was the greatest gift I could have ever received. The fear it awakened in the boys was exactly what I was looking for. It opened a chance for me to gain their trust by putting myself up against the beast. I repeated phrases like we'd beat it, and we'd kill it, and we'd be able to slit its throat. And I faced their fear head on without a second doubt. I became their protector. They sought comfort in the ways of my savagery and eventually would learn to have their own. The pig we sacrificed was our own conch. It symbolized our inner savagery and inner beast that lies within us all. As I understood what the boys wanted, they didn't want some orderly society that wouldn't protect them from the beast. They wanted protection and a guarantee for tomorrow, unlike Ralph.
And my final question for the day is, how did you feel when you realized you had control over the boys?
I felt powerful the moment I realized I had control. I realized I had become the one true ruler, or the one true leader. Not second, I was finally number 1 on this island. Not under civility, rules, or order, but through inner desires we didn't know existed. I accepted the chaos, and I looked to burn down any last trace of society, just as it had left me.
But similar to what happens to Jack in Lord of the Flies occurs to pigs in Animal Farm. How ironic is that? Lord of the Flies and Animal Farm explore the corruption of power as well as the deterioration of society. In Animal Farm, this is shown through the pigs who lust for power and eventually act like humans, demonstrating that same desire for control and power as Jack in Lord of the Flies. Both texts show how fear and desires can overcome civil morality and order, leading to chaos and the collapse of civilization. One could say that it's not internal desires that lead the boys to make irrational decisions and commit savagery, but rather the environment, specifically the lack of adults for order and the isolation of the island. Without civility, rules, and structure, any leader would struggle to maintain order, and the eventual collapse of society would be inevitable. Although it is true that the environment creates conditions for savagery, the need for someone to amplify these emotions must be present. And that's exactly what Jack personifies. The Eid, as his actions are dominated by primal instincts and an unquenchable thirst for power. From the novel's beginning, Jack demonstrates his aggressive tendencies and obsession with hunting. His personal desires for power without a doubt intensify these fears and chaos, driving the collapse of society. But one must exist for the other to succeed. The part environment and Jack play is much of a yin and yang role in Lord of the Flies in accelerating the fall of civilization. Take away all the rules and order of society and what will happen? It will fall every single time, and it's been proven time and time again. Best said by Gamire when he says, in addition, Simon, a spiritual character, had a conversation with Beelzebub that stated that it was part of humans. It was narrated as, you could hunt and kill. You knew, didn't you? I'm part of you. Close, close, close. Golding, 1983, page 143. This further reflected the boys' hunting of beasts and animals was in reality hunting, as the beast was part of human life. Gamire, page 6. It's a natural reflex whether we notice it or not. The beast, savagery, or whatever you like to call it, is a part of us, and eventually will surpass the likes of civilization when order and rules are enforced, like on this island in Lord of the Flies.